nothing is good without good writing. So I don't care how dynamic you are on stage, how fun someone is, how much personality, how beautiful they are to look at. It doesn't matter how credentialed they are. If the writing isn't there, the talk isn't there. And I say this not just as a speaker, but as a stand-up comic who's new to the comedy industry, very new. I've only been doing it a couple of years. And again, it's not personality. It's the writing. And when someone's writing isn't good, their comedy isn't good. And my belief is that a lot of speaking coaching, speaker coaching, and public speaking instruction centers a lot on delivery and presence. Yes, you need that. You absolutely need that. I believe that I have polished my own. But if there is no substance behind it, you cannot dynamo your way to being a great. You could fool a lot of speakers. You could fool a lot of audiences and get booked a lot to speak. But after a while, people go, wait, there's no there. So in my belief, whether you identify as a writer or not, if you do not write, you will not discover.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing. And you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice, and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited today to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest, Terri Trespicio. Terri is a keynote speaker, a brand consultant, a copywriter, and a stand-up comic. Terri works with individuals and organizations to help them nail their messaging and engage their clients, their customers, and their fans. She's also a creator of the online course Tapped to Speak and the Tapped to Speak live event, both designed to help you land your standout signature talk. Basically, if you're trying to get someone's attention in an engaging and memorable way, Terri can help. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where up to January the 15th, we are offering a complimentary marketing health check for your business, complete with a report and action steps for your next 90 days. We'll assess the current health of your marketing specific to your 90-day plan and give you a report on the 3 key steps you can take to transform your marketing into an effective lead generation machine to serve the people you care about. Just visit innovabiz.co/MAS to get started. This complimentary offer is only available until the 15th of January 2019, which is very soon after we publish this episode, so get in quick. In our discussion, Terri talked to me about how to identify your own TED-worthy talk, how to make your message stand out and be meaningful to your audience, and the secret to a successful brand. Hint, it's about digging deep into meaning. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Terri Trespicio. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Manhattan, New York in the USA, Terri Trespicio. Terri's a keynote speaker, a brand consultant, a copywriter, and a stand-up comic. So it should be a lot of laughs today, perhaps. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Terri. It's a privilege to have you as a guest.
No pressure, right? No pressure. Just be funny. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Linda Ugolo, who was on episode 144, she introduced us to Terri and suggested we get you on the podcast. Terrific. So big hello to Linda.
Thank you. She's wonderful.
Now, you work with individuals and organizations to help them nail their messaging and engage their clients, their customers, and their fans. You're also a creator of the online course Tap to Speak and the Tap to Speak live event, which we chatted about briefly before we started the interview. Both are designed to help you land your help your clients land their standout signature talk. Basically, if you're trying to get someone's attention in engaging and being memorable, then Terri can help. So I'm looking forward to learning more about how you go about that today, Terri.
Great.
But before we start doing that, let's find out a little bit more about you as a person. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up, or what did you want to do when you grew up?
I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know what that meant, except that I carried around a notebook. And my favorite part of my homework was on Mondays, when you'd get a new list of 10, I think it was actually 20 new spelling words, and you had to learn those words. But it wasn't just the spelling. I was like, these are new words that you now have in your arsenal. And even as a kid, I thought it was a lot of fun. And they would say, here's your 10 new words. Your homework is to go home and write a sentence using each of these words. And I thought that was about the most fun thing you could do. I was the only one who thought that was fun.
Yeah, so you stood out straight away.
Well, right. But I mean, that you like new words. My mother, I don't remember saying this. My mother says that I was a total nerd alert. I was a nerd. And my mom said that I came home from school and goes, I just learned 10 new words today. And I love it. It's like having 10 new pieces of clothing. So that's how nerdy completely I am. But I mean, look, words have been my tool ever since then.
And you then had a career as a writer, a magazine editor, and you're also a radio host with Martha Stewart, right?
Yes, and I. It's so funny when you are interviewed for anything, it's easy to make it seem like, oh, I went from knowing I'd be a writer to then being a writer, and the rest was history. I went for years in there, really not knowing what I was supposed to do, had no idea how you make a life as a writer, self-loathing at a notch 10, and wouldn't apply for any jobs after college because I assumed no one would want me because I had no experience. If I could go back in time and shake myself, I would. And I would just say, take a job and learn. But I thought you had to be ready already. And I thought I wasn't going to be good enough. So there were many years when I did no writing at all. And I worked in an office, or I did this or that, the other. I didn't land a writing job until I was probably in my 20s. I mean, what I did was I was like later 20s. I interned as a PR intern and got to write press releases. And that was pretty much what I had done that. So really, and I got to tell you, nothing took off in a big way until I got my first job as a copywriter at a wig and hairpiece company, the largest distributor of wigs and hairpieces in North America. And I had earned an MFA. I was about to finish my MFA in creative writing, so my master's in writing, because I didn't know what to do. So I went back to school. It's a lot of people do. I got a job as a writer at this catalog. So I learned how to use words to sell things. And from there, was like, well, what do I do after this? I don't want to stay here forever. This is not it. Then from there, I got a chance to not audition, but, try for a job as an editor, as an associate editor at a little known hippie magazine that went on to become Body and Soul, that Martha Stewart purchased 6 months after I arrived. So a little luck, a little circumstance, sure. But I didn't get my first job in publishing proper until I was 30. And that is when I started really being like, oh, this is my career now. But it took me a long time. So I say that to make sure people listening are like, oh, she just always knew and it all worked out for her,
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. I remember when I was first starting out after university, and the most common rejection reason you would get is, well, you don't have experience.
What a dumb thing to say to us, right?
Yeah, and I always thought to myself, well, it's catch-22, right?
Right, of course.
I don't have experience, so how am I going to get experience without getting a job that gives me that experience? So, and I think it's great that, what you did there is sort of going through advertising and PR stuff, because you were then writing, which is some level of experience.
All I wanted to do was write, and I would do it if I got a job at a dog walking magazine. I would have done. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to do it. And then as you get further along your career, then you can get picky,
Yeah, that's right. So what do you do today, and why do you do it?
Well, I like living in Manhattan. I'd like to stay here. Thank you very much. And so I like to be able to stay. Well, I worked for the Martha Stewart brand for better part of a decade. I was as an editor there. I cut my teeth as an editor, learned how to do that. Then she moved the magazine to New York City, because we were in the Massachusetts area. We were in the Boston area. And she moved the magazine to New York to be with all of her other magazines. We were sort of the the adopted magazine, right?
Mm.
But here's the thing. You don't bring editors to New York City. That's like bringing sand to the beach. There's already tons of editors, but I had already, and this is a great lesson for anyone looking to change their career, I had raised my hand and asked to do other things. So I wasn't just a print editor. They said, oh, we want to do a radio show. I said, I'd like to try that. How about this? I'll try that. I had my hand in a lot of different pots. I offered to do more media for the magazine. I wanted to do TV. So I made it known what I wanted to do. And I got that way more exposure to Martha's whole company, not just the magazine. And that meant when the time came to move the magazine to New York, rather than just, why would we pay to bring an editor here? It was like, well, she does this, she does this. I had differentiated myself enough that they brought me there, but I was the only employee. They laid off every other person but me. And it was hard, right, to lose all of your coworkers. But a lot of them didn't want to get up and move to New York anyway. I'm the one who wanted to do that. So I got the chance to move, and Martha did move me. I had a day to look for an apartment and a day to move. That was a lot. That was crazy. But I stayed here in New York and worked. So that was like almost, all told, I spent 8 years, almost, was it 7 years as an editor? And 2 of them were in New York. And 2 years after I moved here, I got laid off. And that was like, wait, what? Like, what is happening? That magazine ultimately closed, but they were looking to cut back even then. And I got laid off. And I had been hosting a radio show every day at SiriusXM. And that show got canceled too. And so then I was like, wait a minute. I'm not an editor anymore. I'm not a radio host. What am I? I'm someone who has to pay rent and needs to stay here. So instead of going, they said, well, you can go file for unemployment. I said, well, that sounds like signing up to be unemployed. Who does that? I don't want to do that. What about if I just try to get people to pay me for what I'm good at and not go into any office at all? That sounded like a great idea. So then I did what you do, which is, P.S. I had a feeling layoffs were coming. So I had been talking to people. I've been, making sure people knew I was around and available. I started networking in earnest. So by the time I got laid off, I had people I could call at least and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Jürgen, what I started doing was asking people, what's the biggest headache around writing and content that you have? Give me the headache. I will take care of it. So I just started saying, hey, do you need help writing this? I just would ask people what they needed. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I said, I know what I'm really good at. I need to find people who need this skill set, and someone's going to need someone who's been trained as I have. So that's what I did. And that's been now 7 years since I've been on my own. And I have been figuring it out, and like many entrepreneur types, making it up as I go. I had never took the title of freelance writer. I just knew that felt like any freelance writer I knew was just ravaged by deadlines, and they were stressed out and they were always broke. And I said, I am not signing up to do that. How about I call myself a consultant? Because consultants seem to be living high on the hog. So I was like, what if I just position myself that way? So I was making it up, but it worked out because I said, all right, here's what I can do. And I started taking on one client at a time and figuring it out. Now let's fast forward to 7 years later. Today, I get to be very picky about what I do. I am still a writer and a speaker, and I use those skills in a targeted way to do things that I'm interested in, but also to work with clients on their brand messaging. After years of doing kind of what could be called freelance writing and media training, I was training people to speak in the media and speak on stage and all this. Now I know what I do. Finally, it only took me 7 years, and I'm a brand and messaging expert. So whatever you're trying to do, I don't care what it is, what industry it is, I help with that one skill. I can articulate what you're trying to say in a way that compels people to act the way you want them to.
Great. That's a great tagline. I love how you arrived at what you were doing, though, because you kind of focused right at the beginning on what's a problem that people have and a problem that I can solve. So,
that's
something that's
right.
Match your skill set and your knowledge, and then helping them solve that problem, which then led to other things that you could help with and building your business that you have today.
I think that I would not have been able to know I was doing that years ago. I wouldn't have known. No one knows. You know it by doing it. You go, oh, I didn't like doing that. Oh, I like doing this. You pay attention to where you really, what do people say? They use the term zone of genius, which has kind of gotten played out. But the idea of where does it feel almost frictionless, where you get into flow and you know what you're doing feels right. What feels right? The kind of stuff that feels like work, I try not to do too much of that. Yeah. I try to find the stuff that, and it's still hard work, what we do, but at least the friction isn't there because we're not trying to be something we're not. But what also helped raise visibility, which is why I believe so strongly in it, is speaking. So yeah, you could call me a speaker consultant, but really I'm a messaging expert and I help people no matter what they're trying to do. It might be a website or a business collateral materials, might be marketing materials or emails or sales pages, or it might be a TED Talk. It might be your keynote talk. So people go, oh, I thought you just did speaking stuff. No, not really. The point is, if you don't have a good message, you can't take it out into the world, no matter what it is. And I have found no better converter of leads for me, or like nothing that's gotten me as much momentum as speaking in front of a live audience. When I am in front of people, I get more people engaged than I do through a post or an email. And some people have the opposite experience. But I know that is my sweet spot. So I said, well, I want to do more of this. And a few years ago, almost 3 years, I think now. Yes, over 3 years ago, I got an opportunity to jump into a TEDx event because someone bailed. And I had 1 month and I said, can I throw my hat in the ring and do this event? They were looking at a lot of different people. It was TEDx Kansas City. And they said, well, we're in a pressure situation here. What do you got? And I had an idea in my back pocket. I'd had a few of them and I floated them. And I said, well, one of the things that bothers me is that everyone thinks that passion is the way to have the best life. And I think that searching for your passion is a waste of time. And he said, oh my God, I love that idea. And we developed it together. The organizer and I developed it very tightly. It was like 30 days till the event. Most people had 6 months. And what we were excited about was this was not what the rest of the world's preaching. Everyone else says, follow your passion and you'll never work again. Everything will be easy. And I said, what about everyone there who's kicking themselves going, why don't I know what mine is? And they're embarrassed of it and they feel bad and they feel like they're going to be a failure. I said, I hate that advice. I still think we should have passion in our lives, but to wait until you figure it out seems crazy. And he loved it. I got to do that TED Talk. And 3 years later, it has more than 4 million views. And I'm nobody. Nobody knows who I am. I fly under the radar. But the fact that talk did so well, and now it's in the top 100 of all TEDx talks ever given, and there are about 100,000 of them. It's not because I'm anything special. It's because I hit a nerve with a great message. So that's how I know I'm good at what I do. And that's how I help other people figure out what their talks are. Make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And anybody that hasn't heard that talk, we will definitely link to it in the show notes, but it's definitely worth listening to. So I really enjoyed it. And I think the message was one that most of us can relate to. Right.
We all have been there.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about presenting a talk, because I've looked at many TED Talks and I thought that'd be cool to do that.
Do you do a lot of talking? Do you do a lot of speaking?
I do some speaking, yes. But I haven't actually thrown my hat into the ring at a TED Talk yet, because on the one hand, there's that little voice in my head saying I don't have anything that's TED-worthy.
That's what everyone says. Yes, I know.
And so I know you help people find some ideas to do that. So in your example, when you did that talk about passion, so how did you come up with the idea? And I guess you use that as the process to teach other people, right?
Sounds like a great idea. If I had a process, came up with the idea, and then sold that process to people, but that's not how it happened. I had the idea because I had been thinking about things that bugged me. And for me, like everyone has some people think about things that make them happy. I'm a bit of an edgy, irritable person. Like there's no other reason why I'm so at home in this city. I'm impatient and I'm irritable and edgy. And yet the positive side of that is that I'm an intense, creative thinker, fast thinker. Like that's how the pace I like to move at. And so I rub up against things and they bug me, but they always give me an idea. So for me, when I get annoyed at something and I really lock onto it, that's good. That's like, for me, the oyster in the sand, right? Like some little pearl might come out of that if I rub up against it enough. So, but some people aren't, for some people, anger isn't their go-to emotion. You have to talk to your therapist about that. But for me, I said, what are the things that everyone seems to swallow whole, that seems mealy-mouthed, that I don't like, that I think there's a better way? And so I teach not an angry approach to coming up with your TED Talk, but I do help people identify the assumptions they would like to overturn. And I have a process I call the idea funnel. And it basically, I didn't come up with the process till way after I had developed my talks. I've done 2 TED Talks. I've helped other people. I've placed many people at different events, not by booking them, but by helping them come up with an idea that sang for the organizers. And so how I did that, I looked at how I did it and I said, oh, okay, I think I know how I'm doing this. I'm going to boil this down into some kind of process. So then I did it. And part of it, and I'll walk you through just 1 or 2 high-level points for people who are like, I wonder if I have a TED-worthy idea. Let me tell you this. There are so many TEDx events. You do not have to have climbed, a mountaintop or lost a limb or survived a fire to give a TED Talk. There's plenty of people who do those things every day and don't have a talk to give. But if you feel that something's like rubbing at you and you want to share it, there's something there. For me, the TED model is simply first of all, it's not just to me. The TED model has a certain set of rules that it ascribes to that you must, if you are going to have a TED-worthy talk, and it's a model that I teach. And their whole tagline says it, ideas worth spreading. So if someone says, I want to tell people to eat healthy so they can live a healthier life, I say, I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Were you talking? Because everyone's heard that already. So I go, that's not a new idea worth spreading. We already know we should be healthy. What's the counterintuitive idea? What's the thing that you think doesn't get enough attention? So what I did was I developed a funnel for like funneling through ideas. And in order to get through it, I ask people questions. And I actually collected and kind of curated a list of 25 questions that I can give to anyone. And you will find the question there that you most want to answer that will help you develop and find your idea. And that's something I'm actually going to give you guys. Anyone who wants it can have it, and we'll tell you how to get that later. But here's the deal. If you want to figure out, you in particular, or anyone listening, identify first of all, what is the subject, the general subject area? Okay, fine. Maybe you want to talk about self-care, for instance. A lot of women want to talk about self-care that I have worked with. But what aspect of it? Well, I want to talk about being better to yourself. Okay. Let's keep going. What are the assumptions? This is where the talk takes shape. What are the assumptions? What do we think we know about a topic? And how are you going to challenge it? If you say, well, no, I have nothing to challenge. I just think everyone should eat more kale. You don't have a TED Talk. But if you say kale is not the answer, but here's what is, you have to have something that people are going to go, oh, I want to know. What are you going to challenge? So for instance, one woman I was working with is talking about self-care. And she says, everyone thinks it's about getting a mani-pedi and just kind of taking naps and stuff. And I said, you know what? You don't believe that, do you? She goes, no, I think it's more than that. So a talk idea we're working on is how an idea about self-care that it involves pampering and comforting ourselves is not real self-care. See, that's me saying to you, there's something wrong with this idea we have. I want to show you why it's wrong. Those are the idea. That's the kind of idea that hooks into an organizer, a TED organizer's craw. And they go, tell me more. So what you need to do a TED-worthy talk is to have you either start with a story or you start with an idea, meaning start the shaping of it. So you might go, well, I did climb this mountain and here's the insights I had. Okay, then maybe it's you climbing the mountain. I want to know more about that story, about what you were going through. Tell me, bring me into the scene. But then it needs to arc to meaning. I have to understand why this mattered. And it can't just be that you got to know yourself at the end. So there's that way in. Or some people don't know what story they want to share. They said, nothing interesting's ever happened to me, but I have this idea that I can't shake. I say, what's the idea? Well, I just keep thinking that when people say this, they really mean that. Okay. Where has that happened in your life? And then they go, well, this happened the other day. Anecdotal, everyday stories can be perfectly great for a TED Talk. It does not need to be earth-shattering, but you must challenge a way that we're thinking about a thing. Now, I gave a talk on passion. So did like 50 other people. Like there are many curated lists of people who gave TED Talks on passion. And I'm on those lists, but so is lots of other people who's gotten lots of views. They have different assumptions. They have different contexts for telling it, and they are different people. That's why you can do a talk about something that someone else has done a talk about. It's fine, but you need to come at it with why this topic, and what are you challenging that we think we know? Set us straight. And then the last part of this is what's at stake? Why do we care? What if I ignore your advice? What do I stand to lose? And what is the conflict? Where are you struggling with an idea? If you're like, oh, I want to talk about this, but I keep struggling with it, that's a sign that it's a great idea. If you have no conflict and you're like, this is great, it's going to be awesome, everyone's going to love it, I beg to differ. It's got to be that the speaker discovers something in the creation of that talk. You can't just phone it in with the same old keynote you always give, or some big deal expert who's a client of mine said, oh, I could just do one of the talks I give it. I said, no, you cannot. A TED Talk must be original. It must be something you're not always sharing. It must be, maybe it's a smaller moment of your life that's very personal, or something that you've really struggled with and you finally figured out. There's got to be a moment of discovery. It's not about scale. It's about awakening to something. Is that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of good advice there that I gave up writing. You were talking so quickly, but I'll have
Good
to
thing
go
this
back
is recorded, because then you can go back.
Yeah, that's right. I'll replay it, but we'll have some notes there, and I'm sure there's lots of great advice for our audience as well. I did go through those 25 questions, and
you saw them. Good.
The interesting thing to me was that it's not just a foundation for a TED Talk or any talk indeed. It's essentially a foundation for writing.
Yes.
Because to me, I would actually do a little bit of journaling every day, and I'm kind of working on that to build content for our own writing and a series of podcasts I want to do, solo podcasts, and looking at the topics there. And I'm working with a coach through that, and he's saying, well, pull out some topics from just daily journaling,
Yes.
what's going on in your life, and so on. And some days I sit down and yesterday was a bit boring, nothing happened, what do I write about? And I've found that those questions are actually a really great place to start when you're in that situation.
But what you just said was very interesting. You said, I sat down and I thought, nothing happened today. What's worth writing about? Let me remind everyone that Emily Dickinson never left her house, and she wrote some of the world's most memorable verse. So this idea that something has to happen, we live in a really like breaking news, something's always happening. But the best writing I found and the best speaking doesn't necessarily have to be something huge that happened. And you did uncover the secret there. The 25 questions guide are writing prompts. And I'm a speaker, but I'm a writer first. And I actually lead writing retreats. And my belief is that nothing is good without good writing. So I don't care how dynamic you are on stage, how fun someone is, how much personality, how beautiful they are to look at. It doesn't matter how credentialed they are. If the writing isn't there, the talk isn't there. And I say this not just as a speaker, but as a stand-up comic who's new to the comedy industry, very new. I've only been doing it a couple of years. And again, it's not personality. It's the writing. And when someone's writing isn't good, their comedy isn't good. And my belief is that a lot of speaker coaching, and public speaking instruction centers a lot on delivery and presence. Yes, you need that. You absolutely need that. I believe that I have polished my own. But if there is no substance behind it, you cannot dynamo your way to being a great. You could fool a lot of speakers. You could fool a lot of audiences and get booked a lot to speak. But after a while, people go, wait, there's no there. So in my belief, whether you identify as a writer or not, if you do not write, you will not discover. And you don't need any advice from me, Jürgen, but when I heard you say nothing happened today, then I want you to write about the smallest thing in the world and something that either made you excited or something that you wouldn't want to tell anyone else. And you don't have to share it. But I found that I don't have ideas either until I start writing. And as I write, it triggers a part of your brain that is seeking discovery. So until you do that, you won't go, people, I don't want to write today because I can't think of anything. Well, start writing. That's a reason why those writing things exist. They say, don't take your pen off the paper and keep writing, keep going. Yeah. So you know that
that's
works.
Right. That does work. And I guess it's the triggers, and those questions to me were really good triggers for that. Sometimes you have a trigger because there was an event that's on your mind. Sometimes you have a trigger. So I had one recently. One of my hobbies is baking bread, and I've just resumed doing sourdough bread. And one morning I was doing that, and there's a routine to it, and there's a structure, and there's a whole process that goes over a couple of days. And I was actually starting to get really curious about that and thinking, man, how did somebody come up with this whole idea? Because there's so much stuff going on here. There's, somebody had to come up with the idea thousands of years ago, possibly, that you can actually eat the plant that's out there. You can eat the seeds. And then somebody came up with the idea that you can grind those seeds. And then somebody decided, well, if you mixed it with water, maybe it'll actually do something else. And then somebody came up with the idea of letting it ferment, so it formed sourdough and then rose. And somebody came up with the idea of baking it and heating it up and letting it cool down and so on. So there's all these stages of this, and I was starting to reflect on that. Well, how did that evolve, and how long did that take to evolve? And then it becomes a metaphor for any other process.
Of course. That's fascinating. Yeah. See, there you go. I will never in my life probably make a loaf of sourdough bread. It sounds very complex, but the fact that you are doing it is what makes it interesting. So while a history of a thing, who is the guy, Mark, oh God, I gotta look it up, who wrote the book Oyster? His whole book is about oysters. Like he wrote the book called Salt. That's all he did. But for you, something that it would be a fun thing for you to do as a writer is, I would love to see you write down just the steps you took to get it to, what you do. And then what do those steps remind you of? Right? Do they mirror anything else that you do? Or what if you gave instructions for some area of your business using the ingredients or process for sourdough bread and called it sourdough business? Like, I would love to see, what do we learn out of, there's certain, you have to be really careful when you're baking, right? The measurements have to be exact. You have to wait. You have to be patient till it rises. There's a lot in there that we could probably learn and apply to something else that would be fascinating. And just the idea of hearing what it's like for you as a human touching dough, to hear what that's like. There's a discovery in there. What do you learn by making your own bread when there's already plenty of bread you could just buy? There's so much richness. You could write every day of the week this week only on each phase. I would say take one phase and write only about what that's like and let your mind jump around, see what it reminds you of. And then take phase 2 of the recipe the next day and write that. You will find connections that you can't find just thinking about it.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and certainly I was just thinking of something else. The other, we have an almond tree in our yard, and at this time of year, which is about 3 months or 4 months before the almonds are ripe enough for human consumption, we get these parrots come along and eat them. So the parrots are unique because with their beak, they can punch a little hole in the end of the shell and drag out the kernel, and so it looks as though the tree's still full of almonds.
Oh, no.
But it's all empty shells. So the tree's actually placed beautifully in our front yard with the balcony right across from it. And yesterday I snuck out. There were some beautiful, colourful parrots there, and I took some photos of them because I love photography as well. So I thought, well, there's another example of something that I just take it for granted because I saw the birds. I thought I can sneak out there and take photos. The light's good. Took some photos, got some nice shots. But there's a whole story around that as well.
Well, also the parrots, it sounds so magical to me. I can't even imagine going outside and seeing a bunch of parrots on a tree. Some people will be worth losing the almonds to the parrots to bring the parrots there. But for you, in a way, they're kind of the enemy because you might want those almonds. So then it's kind of like, how do you cast those parrots? Like, if you were writing about that, would you be like, look, be wary of parrots. Parrots, they look beautiful. They're this exotic bird. They're interested in what you have to offer. But before you know it, they've gone in and stolen the kernel out of your nut and they're gone. I know people like that, that would be a really interesting lens through which to see human behavior.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we tend to take for granted that can be topics for writing.
Everything is a topic.
And speeches, yeah.
What did Nora, oh gosh, what did she say? Everything is copy. Who said that? Nora Ephron said, everything is copy. Everything can be used to write about.
Yeah,
So
that's
great.
right. And Kim Doyle, who I follow in the online space, she said one of her taglines is "Everything is content."
Oh, true. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right. So let's talk a little bit about brand then. So because a lot of your work is around branding, businesses and personal branding. So what exactly is a brand?
Yes. And actually, this comes very closely to, remember, it's all coming from the base of writing. To me, the way I talk about branding is that it is not purely a design. It's not a website. It's not what you wear to parties. It's not what you always say. These little things are maybe, I know a woman who only wears a certain color and that's her brand. Fine. I get that. Some people really need the visual reinforcement of that. But your brand is one thing and one thing only. It's what your work means to other people. And that means that you own your brand, but you don't own it 100% because someone else's experience of your brand also is a reality of your brand. So if what one person thinks of Chick-fil-A, which is of course a popular fast food chicken company, someone else doesn't like Chick-fil-A because of their political standings, but someone else loves their chicken. So you have to be willing to take some kind of stance and have a distinct and clear brand that is yours and yours alone. The way I talk about it is it's universal and uniquely yours, just like your ideas. But most of the times people try to be something that will appeal to everyone, and then it's forgettable. So I say that for brand messaging, I'm not trying to attract the world to any one brand. What you're doing, and most people aren't, what you're trying to do is attract the right people. And that means that the language you use to talk about your brand should actually deter people you don't want. So when I work with people on their branding, AKA the DNA, the code, the writing, the language they use to express their brand, I'm not a designer. A designer will design your brand, but how can you tell a designer how to design it until you know what it means? I love when people get their logo done and then they give it to me and then they want to do the branding. I was like, well, what are you doing? Right. So it has to come from some kind of meaning. And the only way we can communicate meaning really is in our words. So what that looks like is I'll work with companies, as big as major banks and as small as one person who's like a therapist, and figure out the process is the same. What are the assumptions people have about the work you do and about what their role is in it and why they need it? What problem are you solving? All the questions that someone might say. But a lot of times Brandon will be like, oh, let's think about your demographic and what they want. Yes, part of that is important, but most important is not just how old are they and where do they shop, and that's fine. But a lot of times people can collect all the data in the world. There's all this data, marketing data. If you do not interpret and make a decision about what you're going to say to those people, then you have a lot of data and nothing. So I've branded people who don't have access to a lot of data, but they know what they want to say. And so it's very much a personal process because I talk to them. The work is us talking, usually on a Zoom conference call, where I ask them a lot of questions and try to pull out of them things they don't know are there. Just like what we just did with the parrots and the almonds and the sourdough. Like I already have a fuller picture of you than I had half hour ago. And so that is the process. Let's pull this out. Let's see, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to you? I'm not a therapist. It is not meant to be psychology, but it's meant to identify those things. I work with a lot of people in the financial services industry, a lot of advisors, and they all think they want the same kind of thing. We just want people to trust us with their money and we want to help them plan for their future and all this stuff. But I'm like, it's more than that. Your approach is different from someone else's. The reason someone doesn't have a standout brand, if they don't, is not because they can't have one, but because they stopped short of meaning, either because of fear or ignorance or both. They didn't think they had to go any further. Oh, I'm just going to install your pool. That's what I do. I'm the pool install guy. Okay, so you've basically commodified yourself. And this is one of my favorite examples. I always use it because the guy who installs pools, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but usually it's a dude. I could be wrong. We'll just pretend it's a man, Bob, who installs pools. He thinks, well, I have the best quality pools and I do the best job and I offer great customer service. I go, great, Bob, you're doing your job. I'm glad you're doing your job, but there's 8 other people I could call. So what are you going to say to me on your website and in your language and the way you talk about what you do? That's bigger than just what you sell. And that's what I would tap. Now, I've never worked with a pool person. I would love to, because here's what I would tell them. The reason, and this is just my opinion, I haven't worked with a pool person. please, I live in New York. No one has pools. The reason people get a pool is not because they don't hire you to install it because you're a good installer. That's just your job. The reason they hire you is because they want a pool. Why? Because they'd like to test chlorine and fish bugs and animals out of it? No. But because when you have a pool, you have a certain social status level. And this changes depending on where you live. You live in Miami, you have to have a pool. You live somewhere in Massachusetts, whoa, it's a big deal to have a pool. It's status. It's because you want to be the center of the party. You want people to come over. You want to entertain. There's many ways to talk about that. But that's what I would spend time on. Not, oh, but I do this and I'm good. I'll call you back and I won't break your tools and I won't mess up your lawn. Well, thank you. Please don't do that.
Yeah, it reminds me of I've just finished reading Seth Godin's latest book. This is Marketing.
I'm reading it now.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I was involved in his mastermind that he refers to quite a number of times throughout the book. And my photo is actually on the inside back cover, but that's another topic. What he is very strong on is empathy. So going back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of understanding your target market or your target audience. So he's very strong on empathy. What does it mean to them? What do they believe that you don't necessarily believe? And he also talks about that what you have to offer, what you're selling or what you're promoting, it's the impact it has on the other person, and it's the way that it's the way it makes them feel. That's the really important thing. And if you could kind of get that in your head, and he also talks a lot about status, and he uses examples of animals. The order of people, the order of animals eating is actually an indication of their status within the pack. And as humans, we're actually no different. So the example of the pool is perfect.
And he says, the line I always think of him saying when I saw him speak was, people like us do things like this. It's like, why do people go and get all dressed up and go to a fundraising dinner? It costs $1,000, $5,000 a plate. Why? Why can't they just stay home and write a check? Because they need to be reaffirmed of their standing and why they do this. It creates the glue. It creates the community. So we need that. It's the most basic human thing. And he is my absolute favorite for turning marketing into something human instead of a big, clever making machine, which it is not.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm attracted to his work. And particularly that book is fabulous because it does very much point out that, marketing's something you don't do to somebody, you do it with them. And so it's a very human picture.
Well, someone actually said to me the other day, we were working on their messaging and they were like, well, isn't there a clever way we could say that, like for marketing, like isn't there a marketing, like a trick? And I was like, there is no trick. And I thought, oh God, the marketing world has just been done a disservice to itself. I said, we're not going to be clever. I said, we're going to tell them exactly what we're trying to say. We need to restore honest communication to the values we purport to offer. This idea that I'm going to be clever, I can't clever your way. If I hope to clever my way into people's businesses, I would not be living here. That's for sure. So this idea that marketing is clever, oh, that's clever. People think they're really experts on it. They go, oh, that's clever. They're trying to get you to think that. This shouldn't be about trickery. It never is. There's nothing I do that is about how to trick the customer. That is the wrong-headed approach.
Yeah, and one of the things I think you say somewhere about branding is that it is a person-to-person communication, and a lot of the times I hear, and I'm sure you do, that we sell business to business.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's different. Oh, well, hang on. It is a person-to-person communication, and I work with people to do ideal client. I do a lot of ideal client exercises, and they say, well, our ideal client is this sort of business and this size business,
it's
and
not
they're in this
business
industry. And I say, well, yeah, but who's the decision maker? Who do you talk to in that business? Who's the person you talk to in that business? And okay, right. So you talk to that person in that business.
But where did we lose that? Where did we get this idea that buildings are talking to each other? This is not what happens. And I've had the same thing. People said to me, well, it's business. I go, oh, so is that licensed to be boring now? Are you going to be talking to a business run by squirrels? Because in which case we need to change our approach. But if it's humans, pretty sure humans react the way humans react. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. And when you consider the needs and the wants and the frustrations that they have, and what are you going to talk to them about? It's a person-to-person communication.
Yep, 100%. And that gets missed. It really does. It gets missed all the time. And people think oh no, we'll do it this way. They don't people still don't value a true marketing effort. They go, oh, well, that's just marketing. They treat it like it's icing on the cake. We'll just glaze over it later. It's the same with design. I mean, ask a designer. They'll say, design is not something you throw on top to make it look good. Design should be down to the bones of what someone's doing so that it hangs together, right? I mean, you do business design. I know people who consult on business design. We have to think about design and communication as more innate to the efforts we're making, not as an afterthought.
That's right. And the whole concept of design thinking now is actually a much bigger topic than just sketching a logo or designing a brochure.
Right.
All right. This is fascinating, Terri. I could go on for ages, but aware of the time here. Let's move on to our innovation round, which we're calling the Buzz, and it's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully we'll get some really insightful answers today. Not that we haven't already got a lot of insightful information that we can use. So hopefully these ones will inspire people to go and do something awesome today.
Great.
So what's the number one thing anyone can do to be more innovative?
To be innovative, try to expose yourself to things outside of what you're trying to do. And I say this to remind myself to do it as well. With you, with your sourdough and your parrots, and me with doing other things. I forget who said it. I wish I could remember, because this is such a brilliant thought. I don't know if it was Steve Jobs. I don't know if it was someone from the 1800s, but they said creativity is connecting seemingly unrelated things. And for instance, when people say, oh, you say such interesting things to me, or you have such interesting analogies. I go, it's kind of like this, it's kind of like that. The reason I do it is because I can only communicate through familiar touchstones. Analogies work for that reason. It's like, hey, this idea we're talking about, it's kind of like this other thing that we both know. And so that is how I get creative. I go, what is this like? What does this remind me of? And anyone in the creative field at all, where their job is to come up with new ideas, and innovators are absolutely part of that, they look at one idea, say they look at a startup that was very successful, say Uber, for instance, and they say, oh, wow, what a great idea. How could we apply that to something totally different? Uber for bikes, or Uber for laundry, or Uber. So not that you want everything to be derivative from Uber, of course not. But when there's a great idea, there's another way to use an idea. And so the only way to stay innovative is to not get lost in the details of how I'm going to scale my business. Again, Seth Godin said, do something you can't scale first. If you do something that you can easily scale, then I think you're just making t-shirts and then you've commodified. The danger of slipping into commodity too quickly and how can I make money from this quickly is, to me, never a sustainable thing. So if it's something that comes from true service, how to come up with innovative ideas is, how are ways to surprise people by challenging assumptions they don't even know they have about the world? What a delight that I could order a car on my phone, or that I could do this some easier way. But it must come through improving someone else's life. So if you're always looking at things and saying, what about if this were that? Combining ideas. You can only do that if you're exposing yourself to lots of different ideas. So when I started working alone, I was home a lot, and I said, I have to get out of my house. I cannot just stay here. I need to have a reason to go out. And so I signed up for improv acting classes, something I'd always wanted to take and try. And also it terrified me. So I went and I love performing. I'm a natural performer, but improv, where you're going to make things up on the spot with other people that you don't know, seemed very scary. And I went and left my apartment I left more than once a week, but this class was once a week for like 3 hours. And I found it to be the most powerful experience. I took it for 2 years. I wasn't trying to make a career out of that, but it made me go fully engage with people I didn't know. We did not have our phones out. You're engaged in play. and you're engaged in ideas and making things up with no stakes. Who cares if you mess up a scene in improv? By the way, I think everyone should take an improv class, but the point, because it really takes you out of your comfort zone. But if you can play and change how you see things, you will innovate. And a book that you must read is The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp, the very famous dancer choreographer. I put off reading this book for years, and when I finally read it, I said, what the heck was I waiting so long for? And she says the next 5 years of your life, how they turn out will be inspired largely by the people you meet and the books you read. And so if you continue to read and explore different things and meet people that you don't already know, you will naturally, if you're naturally inclined to innovate, you will.
Yeah, lots of great advice in that. So we'll link to that book by, is it Tharp?
Twyla Tharp, Tharp, The Creative Habit. How do you make creativity a habit? Great for innovators.
Yeah. I think I've come across it sometimes. So
you'll love it. I can already tell, knowing you now, you will love it.
Okay. All right. I think you may have answered this question already. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
You've got to put yourself in lockdown. You've got to sit and create it. Thinking about it, kicking it around with a friend at a coffee shop, wondering about it, daydreaming, that's fine. But how I created, say, my Tap to Speak course, it was right after Christmas. I remember it was like 2 years ago, January. I decided I wasn't going to drink and I wasn't going to eat sugar. So I had nothing else to do. And so I stayed home and I said, I want to put my TED-worthy talk process down so someone else can learn from it without having to hire me directly. And so I spent the month creating that course. And when I got in the thick of it, it was so fun because I was really creating something. If you want to sleep well at night, make something. And so how to do it is you must give yourself time, quiet time away from any other business demands. That is the only way anything's going to get done.
Yeah, great advice. And great advice for anybody that wants to build courses as well.
Oh, yeah. Anything. You want to do anything. You can't do it in a crowded room. Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite tool or system for improving your productivity and allowing you to be more innovative?
Well, I found pretty quickly a few years in running my own business that I could not and would not run my own books. It is not a skill that I have, and it's not a skill that I wanted to spend time learning. So what I have gradually been able to do is hire people to help to offset tasks that bring me to my knees and make me cry. And like bookkeeping has brought me to tears more than any therapy session ever. So I hired someone to do that. And I also, the biggest investment I have made and the most worthwhile was in hiring this is not a full-time employee. I don't have any full-time employees, but I have a contracted person whom I trust very much, who actually spent a lot of time in Australia, who is my business manager. I am not her only client, but I said, here's where my weakness is. I have trouble managing projects and doing projects. One zoom out, one is zoom in. And if I don't zoom in, it doesn't get done. So she is my zoom out. So that's a big investment to have someone you're going to pay every month, like a retainer fee, to help you do that. But it has changed my entire life. Maybe you want to hire a VA to start with. I didn't, because I wanted someone who already knew systems better. So yes, she got me on systems. I use Asana for project management. She taught me how to use it. She set up our system. So it's like clockwork. I said, I wish I had someone who put in front of me what I had to do that day, like a CEO would have, but I want that. I want to know. And so she takes care of all the stuff that make me want to weep. And she says, please focus on this. Please do this. And I tell her all the projects. She is now doing the agreements for clients. I have the bookkeeper doing the invoices. I used to try to do all of that myself. So that's about the extent of my scale right now, because the work doesn't happen without me. But do not try to do it all. Do not be a hero. I have grown my own personal, like my own business here, income exponentially in the past 5 years and the past 2 years specifically because of this investment.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it means that you can focus your time and your energy on the things that you're good at and where you add the most value to the business.
Automate. Also like Acuity. I go, here's a link, pick a time. I don't go booking back and forth. Take those things out.
Yeah, love those things. So we're big fans of Acuity as well. All right. Now, this next one you might have answered already as well. What's the best way to keep a project on track?
Have someone
client
hold your feet. So have someone hold your feet to the fire. Also set deadlines and make someone else know them. So if it's a client, if you don't have a manager or a VA or anything like that, I live and die by the calendar. I put the due dates in there. You cannot get stuff done without a deadline. It just will never be a priority. So it's kind of like when you set a deadline, you set the fuse on fire. And once you light that fuse, it's cooking down. And you were like, you got to move on it. If you don't set a deadline, it's like not lighting the match at all. It will not get done. So to me, I book myself pretty tightly because I can work quickly when I know I have a tight deadline. And when things drag on for me, I get bored and I get less productive. So I move fast. I like to have shorter periods with clients. Not everyone wants that, but everyone can have their own business design based on the way they most want to work.
Yeah, love that.
So know that. That's key. Know how you like to work. Don't just sign up for someone else's system. Figure out when are you at your best and make sure that you're only working that way. And it takes some time to figure that out.
That's right. Yeah. And it comes back a little bit to working with the right clients, doesn't it? Knowing who your ideal client is.
People say all the time, like, I'll know I'm in business when I have people who want to pay me. I said, no, you're in business when you can turn people's money away. I knew I had made it on my own when I knew I could deter someone and actively deter them from hiring me. Like, no. In the beginning, it was like, oh my God, can I get people to pay me? After a while, if you are in that state where you're desperate, people are going to smell it on you. You have to be willing to turn away. And if you say yes to money from hands that you don't like, you will regret it. In fact, I will tell you, I did have the opportunity to meet Seth Godin. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me personally, he said, all of the complaints you have are because you have chosen the wrong clients. Choose better. So if you're in a client-based business, you say, oh, but it's for the money. No money is worth the hell you will go through.
Yes, hopefully we've all learned that lesson. I've certainly learned that lesson the hard way.
It's scary to say no, though, isn't it? It's scary to say no to someone and go, I don't think this is a fit. You go, oh my God, did I just turn away money? Every time I've done that, a better thing has come up. Yeah.
And also, I mean, I've had 2 or 3 examples. I'm a slow learner where I've taken on a client because I needed the money.
Well, we all have done that.
And regretted it each case. And certainly a couple of those I've felt up front, not sure if this is a good fit, but I'll deal with it. I can deal with it.
You know what you do? You set a clause. If you're not sure, what I've done is just don't sign up for a long thing. Say, I need the money now. Let's just do the 30 days or do the short one-off engagement so that you do have a cash infusion, but at the same time, you're not committed. That's all.
Yeah. But now I take the view that, I'm very service oriented. That's one of my big values. I want to serve my clients. So if somebody comes along and I'm not convinced we're a good match for them and what they need, or we just don't click for whatever reason, then I'll just say, look, I think you'd be better served, and I'll unless they're a real, not nice person.
Right, exactly.
I will refer them on to somebody that I think might be a better match for them. And by doing that, I think I've helped them more than if I take them on board as a client. All right. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Figure out, go beyond what it is that you do, whether that's pool installing, marketing, sales, emails, whatever it is. Go beyond just the surface of what you do to why they want you. And if you rattle off a list of things of like, oh, well, they need me because they feel this way, and it comes too easily, you haven't broken fresh ground. It is hard work to figure out what makes you stand out. But you will lose if you're not able to grab someone's attention by using language and an approach that is standout. And I know that sounds like, oh, you want to stand out, do something stand out. But the best way is to figure out, and maybe you work with someone, maybe you have someone mentor you, but to figure out what is the real reason why someone needs you. If you're a copy editor and you correct things and you find errors, you go, well, because no one wants mistakes in their work, period, the end. Well, why? Go further. Ask another question. Why do they want to have why do they need that? Because they don't have time to do it themselves, or they don't know the rules of grammar. Okay, next. And they want it to look right. Why? You know the real reason someone hires a copy editor? Because they don't want to look stupid. And that just brings us to the ego. I have yet to see a good copy editor position themselves as that. And I wish one would. I always have these ideas for people that I wish someone would use.
Yeah.
But like, no one wants to look stupid. That's why you need a copy editor. Like, go to the human need and speak to that. Don't just speak to your business and what you do. No one actually cares unless you're solving a bleeding need on the other side. So to me, work hard at that. Don't underestimate that. If you go, oh, when they meet me, they'll know I'm the right fit for them. If you can't get it into words, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I like that you said, if the answer comes easily, then you haven't really broken
You're echoing.
through that.
You're just echoing. If you say it easily and you feel like you just know it, then you're echoing what other people said. Write about it. Journal it. Get it down. It should feel like a little bit of work, because that's what breakthrough ideas require.
Yeah. And I love, you kind of touched on it there in going through asking those questions, but I love using that 5 whys technique, which, came from the quality control movement in Japan in the 60s. They were kind of looking at, something went wrong. Well, why did it go wrong? And they keep asking why until they get to the root cause of the problem. I think it can be used in this sort of situation as well. You say, well, why do people hire a copywriter, for example, to make sure they don't have mistakes in that? Well, why?
Why?
Keep asking why. Yeah.
Even not just it doesn't have to be because I'm afraid of dying. Like, it doesn't have to end on something like that, but it might be. What you'll get when you keep digging is the assumption base. Oh, because people assume that this, now you got it. Then you say to them, you assume this, don't you? And it shocks them because it's so familiar, but it hadn't been surfaced.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, great advice. All right. So what's the future for you, Terri, in your business?
Well, I would love to tell you I have a 5-year plan, know exactly what I'm doing, but what do we do every day? We
pursuing your passion.
Yeah, right. Just me and my following my passion around. I'm just going to basically jump off a ledge and fashion my parachute on the way down, which is essentially I haven't, look, 2 years ago, if you had told me, oh, you're going to be doing a lot of brand consulting for the financial services industry, I would have said, why? I don't know anything about financial services. So I don't know. Again, I believe it's who you meet, where you speak, could open up other areas of business. But I know that this is my skill. This is what I do. I will always be doing some version of this. But if TED Talks go away and everyone likes something else, then I'll probably make sure that I can adapt what I do for the needs of the market. And right now, thought leadership still loves TED Talks. And so I offer that as a service. I do. And I had mentioned to you that I ran my own 2-day event. That was essentially a speaking event, but it was really a writing event because people are trying to come up with their TED-worthy ideas. It's a 2-day in-person event. I had never done anything like that before. I loved it so much. I'm doing it again. And my goal is to do 2 of them a year. And from that event, what I tend to do is offer a small workshop, a retreat, like a really high-touch luxury retreat where we go away and write. I am a certified gateless writing instructor, which means nothing to anyone yet, except that it's an approach to tapping the genius in other people. And I help them do that. So I love doing events. I love speaking. I love retreats. I'm going to just continue to do more of what I love and figuring out where it fits others' needs as I go. I'm also at work on a book, and there's no news to report on that because it's not totally finished, but that's yet to come. But I hope to just continue to reach people and help them to get a better sense of what they're trying to say to the world and why it matters.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to reading more about that, and we'll mention the...
where people can get the guide. You can get the free guide. Yeah. You can then you sign up for the free guide, and then you will hear from me. And to make it really easy, since my last name is a pain, just go to Terri, Terri, sentme.com. TerriSentMe.com. And you'll go in there, you'll see the guide, you pop in your email, and then I will be in touch. And I check all of my own emails. So if you have anything you want to ask me, feel free. And that's where you can find me.
Okay, great. So we'll have the link in the show notes, TerriSentMe.com, and people can explore it there. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in innovation and in productivity? Don't
be afraid to bring in who you are. Don't just hide behind the LinkedIn profile and say, oh, this is what I am, what I've done. You're not just what you've done. You're what you promise that people can be. And that is what makes thought leaders so appealing. They are leaders. We look to them for fresh and insightful and maybe a little bit challenging, controversial ideas. If you're not trying to get us to think in a new way, then you are not doing your job and you will quickly disappear. So no matter what you do to make money, thought leaders don't make money doing thought leadership, right? They might write books, they might speak, they consult, whatever. They might be an employee somewhere, but you can be one. You just have to be willing to put your money where your mouth is and say what it is that you really think and speak truth to power, right? And be able to say things that might not be popular. If you're cowed by needing everyone's approval, you will not leave a mark.
Yeah, that's right. And I like, you use the word insightful. I think that's, there's a secret there that people who taking a stand and highlighting issues, but then providing insights into why that might be an issue or what it might look like if it were different. I think that is really powerful.
Include your life, who you are as a person, what's happened to you, right? It's not just about what happened at work. It's like the whole picture of who you are.
All right. Thanks, Terri. This has been really great. So other than terrisentme.com, where can people reach out and say thank you? Well,
you could actually contact me directly on my site if you want to go there. You can always message me through there, territrespicio.com. I am the only Terri Trespicio, it turns out. So it's pretty easy to find me, and Google knows that people misspell it all the time. But you can find me on Facebook. The best way to reach me personally is to reach out through the website because that comes directly to my inbox. So that would be the best way. I'm also on Twitter at Terri T. It's easy to find me.
All right. Well, we'll post links to all of those in the show notes. Finally, then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why?
I actually have some people I think you absolutely must talk to. And there are three people. One is Paula Rizzo, who wrote the book Listful Thinking, and she created the blog listproducer.com. She is an Emmy Award-winning TV producer who is one of the most productive people I know. And she's had to be because she's a real procrastinator. So she created a whole approach and has a specific approach to list making. The people who love lists love her. She's also a media strategist, and she and I actually are business partners on a project called Lights Camera Expert. We teach people how to get and keep media attention. But she is very sharp and incredibly funny and practical, really great for practical advice in terms of how to be productive. But also she went on her own as an entrepreneur. So she's doing her own thing. She's a must. The other two, Elise Bennin, who is marketing mentor. If you don't know her, you absolutely must, Jürgen, you have to. She does so much great content on how creative people can become leaders and grow their businesses, sustainable businesses from your creative skills. She's one of the people I look up to so much. She's at marketing-mentor.com. And then this other woman I just met in the past few months, and I am so impressed with her. Her name is Stephanie Hayes, Hayes. She lives in Canada, and she focuses on business design. We were talking about earlier, and I talk about it differently now because of her, and that's how I know she's impressive. She's changed the way I think about business design. And she says, as I told you, that there is no one business strategy or plan or model that you should follow to be successful. But if you do not make it shaped to the way you excel, it won't work. And so I've worked with her a little bit, and she's helped me think through what packages I'm offering so that I can do more of what I like and less of what I don't like. But she has a real original thoughts about creating businesses that are sustainable and scaling them. So I think those three women are just a home run.
Wonderful. So it's three for the price of one. So Paula, Elise, and Stephanie, look out for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Terri Trespicio.
Great.
So, thanks so much, Terri. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed it. I've taken a lot of notes, and I will go back and listen and take some more notes, I'm sure. I've enjoyed this immensely and learnt quite a lot. Good. And thanks again. Let's keep in touch.
Yes, please. And send it to me. Of course, I will share it out to all the world, as many people as I can.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Okay.
hope you enjoyed that insightful conversation with Terri and, like me, appreciate her generosity in sharing her experience and knowledge with us. In addition to her energy and passion, the things that stood out for me in Terri's interview were the importance of serving your audience and addressing their needs that have meaning for them, as well as the principle of challenging existing assumptions and ideas to stand out. I'd love to know what you took away from Terri's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at InnovaBuzz.co/Terri Trespicio. That is TerriTrespicio. All lowercase, all one word, InnovaBizz.co/Terri Trespicio. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Terri there, as well as links to her website and the other things we spoke about during the interview. Terri suggested 3 people for me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, 3 for 1. Paula Rizzo of listproducer.com and her partner in Lights Camera Expert. Elise Benoon of marketingmentor.com and Stephanie Hayes, online business strategist and coach. So Paula, Elise and Stephanie, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Terri Trespicio. Remember to visit InnovaBizz.co/MAS to access the complimentary marketing health check for your business. Now, this offer is only available until the 15th of January 2009, which is very soon. So go to InnovaBizz.co/MAS now. Go on, head there now. You know you want to. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBizz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.